Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order our regular board meeting for Monday, June 13th, 2022. I'd ask that all those present please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Batkins.
Here.
Mr. Brado.
Here.
Mr. Olgiati.
Here.
Mrs. Rose.
Here.
Mr. Tominello.
Here.
Mr. Witt here. Mr. Verkowski.
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes of May 23rd, 2022, and approval of the bills in the amount of $1,280,840.86, as well as we discussed prior to the board meeting, approval of the check for $800 to the Tin Whiskers Band for the June 23rd Music in the Park session. Is there discussion or a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Okay. Motion by Mr. Badkins. Is there support?
Support. I think you just misspoke, though, on the total of the bills.
Oh,
It ends in 740.86, and I think you said a different figure, so in case.
I'm sorry.
Somewhere
Okay.
in the minutes.
Well,
But
to
yes,
clarify, $1,280,740.86.
correct.
Yep, okay,
Sounds
good.
good.
All right, good. Thank you for that. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. I don't know of any modifications, so unless there are any, I'd be looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Support.
All right, well, motion by Mr. Olgiati, is support by Mr. Tominello. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is announcements. I have a few announcements, and we also have an announcement from our cable technician. The Harrison Township Library is hosting a special officer from our Macomb County Sheriff's Department. A canine unit will be on site to help teach about the police dog program. That's July 15th at 1 p.m. There will also be police dog demonstrations to show what these special officers can do. Our Harrison Township Fire Department is also coming to the library. Mark your calendars for August 12th for a fun story time and demonstrations by the department. A fire truck will be present to explore, for kids to explore after the demonstrations. Our library is also hosting a free electronics recycling event this Saturday, June 18th, from 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. There are some items they'll accept, some they won't, so we encourage you to go to their website to look at the list of items that are and are not going to be accepted. For more information on these and other great community events, you can visit the library's website, htlibrary.org. Call them at 586-329-1261, or you can email the library at librarian@htlibrary.org. Our Harrison Township Fire Department currently has an open eligibility list. If you would like to pursue the chance of becoming a part of our elite rescue team, you can visit the fire department section of our website. Our treasurer's office is excited to continue to announce the launch of a new billing and payment portal for tax and water payments. The portal offers a free payment option which drafts funds from your checking or savings account. You can use this free payment method for transactions via the new portal on our website or by phone using an interactive voice response system. Look for more information and communications provided by the Treasurer's Office over the next few weeks. And also, if you're curious, you can visit the Treasurer's page on our website. The Parks and Rec Committee will host a free concert at Waterfront Park coming up June 23rd from 6:30 until 9 p.m., beginning their Concert in the Park series. Light snacks and refreshments will be sold. The first concert features the Tin Whiskers Band. Our Harrison Township Senior Center is moving right along. They've got a monthly casino trip on the last Friday of every month. Space is limited, so you do need to register for that. Our Senior Center is also offering chair yoga on Tuesdays and Fridays at 1 p.m. to help seniors increase their strength and flexibility. Also an aerobics strength class Mondays at 1 p.m. The senior center also hosts bingo every Wednesday at noon and euchre every Thursday at noon. For more information, for times and for events, and to answer any questions, you can always call Jen, our coordinator, 586-466-1497. And for more information on these as well as all other township events, you can call the supervisor's office, 586-466-1445. Visit our website, harrison-township.org, or follow us on Twitter at HarrisonTWPMI. Now I'd invite up Mr. Patrick Linneberry, our cable technician, to make a brief announcement.
Thank you. Again, I am Patrick Linneberry. I'm the Senior Cable TV Technician, 38363 Cherry Lane. As I mentioned at the last board meeting, we have our YouTube channel up and running now, and we are streaming, so you can watch me live on YouTube while I'm doing this right now in front of you. You can actually hear me on delay. So I just wanted to let you know and let the residents know that they can now watch all of the meetings, the township board meetings, the ZBA and planning commission meetings on YouTube while we are in fact live. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you get notification on your phone anytime we go live from this room. Anytime we update new content, if we upload videos after the fact, whether it be a park and rec event, like our fishing derby or other things, you will get a notification that we've put new content on our channel. So just want to let the board know that that is now up and running. This meeting is in fact live on YouTube, and as all meetings will be going forward.
Great, sounds good, thank you very much.
So if you have any questions, I would take care of them. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, board.
Supervisor, if I can, I just want to add to that. So we're going to be updating our website with all that information as well. So anyone will be able to go to our cable webpage and get the instructions on how to stream and how to sign up for YouTube. Still coming, because this is sort of a new thing. The other thing I just want to share with the board is, so with our new payment portal, we have over 62 residents who signed up for paperless billing. So every time that happens, it saves the township money, which in turn saves the residents money as well. So that's really great. We had a really smooth transition for the first wave of water and sewer bills, and we're working on the second wave. The other thing is I wanted to mention summer tax bills. They are going to be mailed, and residents should be receiving those around the 1st of July, 1st to 3rd of July. So expect your summer tax bill.
And are there new payment options for that?
Oh, that's all goes through the new payment option. Yes, you'll be able to pay online. You can't use reoccurring payments or auto payments for taxes because of the way the laws are set up. We must send you a bill. So, but you can surely pay any way you'd like on the new platform.
Okay, good. So, and of course, sometimes paying online saves you the time and money of traveling here, or writing a check, so that's a good thing as well. Great, thank you.
Mr. Supervisor.
Yes.
Just want to mention to residents, if you're on our permanent absentee list, you've already received your absent voter application to receive a ballot for the August and November election. If you did fill that out, we will begin mailing those out next week around the 23rd. If anyone would like to request an absentee ballot for the August or November election, you can go on the township website and download the application, or you can swing by the clerk's office and we can have one there for you.
Okay, great. Any other announcements?
Yeah, I just got something real quick about the fishing derby that was held Saturday. The 17th annual fishing derby was held Saturday. Record numbers. We're picking up steam every year. It was a great event. All possible because of the sponsors that we have. We just have excellent sponsors this year, and they make it easy when you can buy things and get things for the kids. Couple things, Cabela's was fortunate enough that Conservation Officer Solori touched base with them a couple weeks ago. We were invited down to pick up a gift card and get some fishing stuff at discounted rates. Fortunately, our professional photographer, Pat, came and took some photographs of the event. So we're going to write a nice letter over to Cabela's and hopefully attach some photographs with that as well. All the sponsors that we had, again, it makes it real easy. Freedom Boat Club came, and U.S. Auto helped offset what we didn't get with the gift cards. And also they brought several volunteers. I would say for the first time in a long time, we had plenty of volunteers. So that was nice.
Parks and Rec Committee, we started planning this back in January. The whole committee just made up of everything. We had a couple issues that came up during the event and just, people just stepping up. Our volunteers were just phenomenal. Again, Pat was doing the photographer, and we did have, Harrison Township firefighters local 1737 stop by, sort of a surprise visit. Fishing was a little slow, so we had some little ones wandering, so it really filled in the slot just perfectly. We had a past board member come out and cook hot dogs. That's his new calling. So if anybody needs a professional hot dog cooker, shoot me an email and I'll send you his number. But just all in all, it was just a perfect day. The weather was perfect. Everything was perfect. Nobody got hurt. The beach helped us out, set us up. It was just, the day just went great. And what makes it worth it for me are the kids and all the smiles and all the memories that are had. So just thank you to everybody. I started to write out a list of names, and there's just too many names to mention. So Parks and Rec Committee was just fabulous. All our sponsors, again, I cannot thank them all enough. And Ms. Rosa attests to that with her first event with the road rally. And now we're on a roller coaster now with all the concerts coming up and everything else we got going. So thank you for everybody that supported it.
Okay, well, thank you for all the effort put in there to provide a really great program for the young folks in our community. Any other announcements?
Just come on out to the park, Waterfront Park on June 23rd for that first concert. It's free. Bring a picnic, lunch, basket, whatever. There will be some refreshments for sale that will support the library, but just good entertainment for the whole family and, really nice venue. There'll be parking right on site, and boaters are welcome too. They can anchor offshore, and we're hoping to see some boaters out there. It'll go from 6:30 to 9, so you're in before it gets too crazy, before too many fish flies, but let's see how this first one goes.
All right, great.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, anything else? Hearing none, we'll move forward on our agenda. Item D1, from the clerk's office, a resolution. Mr. Witt?
Yes, as is customary, we prepared a resolution honoring the recently retired Battalion Chief Mark Hoskins. And so I'll read it to the board. At a regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees for the Charter Towns of Harrison on Monday, June 13th, the following resolution was adopted. Whereas Mark Hoskins has had a long and distinguished career as a Harrison Township firefighter, and whereas Mark Hoskins served as a member of the Harrison Township Fire Department for 32 years, 11 of those in leadership as Battalion Chief, and whereas Mark Hoskins has received multiple commendations from the department for his command skills and meritorious actions while serving the public, and whereas Mark Hoskins has received multiple departmental honors for life-saving action, including 4 unit citations and 2 life-saving awards, and whereas Mark Hoskins has received a departmental chief letter of merit, and whereas Mark Hoskins was Harrison Township Firefighter of the Year in 2007 and 2017, whereas Mark Hoskins has demonstrated a commitment to the safety of the community and a commitment to making Harrison Township a better place to work, live, and play. Now therefore be it resolved that on behalf of the residents of Harrison Township, the Board of Trustees wishes to thank Mark Hoskins for his years of service to the community and to wish him continued success in his future endeavors. I'll make a motion to adopt that resolution.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mrs. Rose to adopt the resolution honoring Mr. Mark Hoskin. Any discussion on the motion?
He's gonna be missed.
Yeah, for certain. Hearing none and seeing no public comment, Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Mr. Witt, yes. Mrs. Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Batkins?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Olgiati?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. Verkest?
Yes. Great. But he's moving on to a position in another community as a fire chief. I'm sure he'll do a great job there. Absolutely. All right, next on our agenda, let's see, is approval of promotions regarding the fire department. May 28th, 2022 was Battalion Chief Mark Hoskins' official retirement date, and that retirement created a need for the following promotions to be effective on the same date. Lieutenant Lorkowski would move to the rank of Battalion Chief, Sergeant Durso would move to the rank of Lieutenant, and Firefighter Evans would move to the rank of Sergeant. And the costs are already defined in the collective bargaining agreement for our fire department. So I make a recommendation that we approve the promotion, as I stated.
So moved.
All right, is there support?
Support.
Motion by Mr. Badkin, support by Mr. Olgiati. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Board. Next on the agenda, item F1 regarding some electrical improvements. Board members, we have discussed several improvements to our facilities, including the power at our Veterans Park in front of our hall here, as well as the power at Waterfront Parks Pavilion. Mr. Axtell, our Public Works Director, had arranged for a contractor to make some emergency repairs at Waterfront Park, as well as to bore some underground lines to run power to these locations. He worked with the same electrical contractor to install the new power as discussed, with approval of the 3 full-time officials. Attached are invoices for all of this work totaling $6,290.40. At this time, I'd recommend that we approve the electrical work at Waterfront Park and Veterans Park at a cost of $6,290.40. Is there a motion or discussion?
Make a motion to approve the electrical work at Waterfront Park and Veterans Park at a cost of $6,290.40.
All right, is there
Support.
Support. We got a motion by Mr. Witt and support by Mr. Brado. Any discussion on the motion?
These were some of the improvements that we were talking about in Springtown, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, when we had done our tour,
Right, exactly, okay.
and, you know, kind of sometimes coordinating some of this work's a little tricky, and you're not really sure who you can get out and when you can get them. We've had good luck with Endeavor Electric, and so they've taken care of making those improvements for us. Any other discussion? Hearing.
I'm sorry.
Nope.
I know that we use them quite a bit, but was there a reason we didn't get competitive quotes?
The electrical was severed at Waterfront Park, and so while he was out, like, it was an issue that needed to be repaired right away, and while he was out there, it was just as easy to have him finish the
Yeah,
remainder of the
it
work.
began with emergency repairs, and while he was doing some of those emergency repairs, it kind of set up the work for this. The board did approve the emergency repairs.
Yep.
But it kind of, the two projects sort of blended together. So the answer to the question is we had already kind of established a relationship through half of the project, or some of the work, with this contractor. Knowing we had good results, we just continued.
Well, there was no doubt that it needed upgrading, so. Okay, thank you.
I love the idea of having the amp under the outdoor service for the pavilion.
Yeah, having the
Something
additional
really,
power.
really great, yeah.
And it'll pay dividends for every person who has an event there.
Sure.
You know, to have additional power for warmers and things like that. A little safer and less difficulties. Any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on our agenda, item F2 regarding Meadowbridge sewer charges. Meadowbridge condominiums are a multi-building development in Harrison Township. Each of the buildings has its own meter, and there are maybe a dozen buildings. I'm going by memory here. In 2017, we stopped receiving a signal from the sending unit on the water meter at Building 9. We made numerous attempts to make contact with the residents of that building in order to replace the sending units. The specific meter and sending unit is in one individual's condo, so we had to work with that individual, and they chose just to basically ignore us. So this went on for a pretty long time, and during that time, we had estimated their water bill based on what they had historically used. And knowing that there's multiple buildings, you have a pretty good average or method of averaging out the consumption. We recently were allowed access, and the meter reading, the physical meter itself, didn't fail. So we could read the actual meter, and the amount of water that flowed through that meter during that estimated period was substantially higher than the amount that we had estimated. So that, basically catching up with that meter, we came up with a figure of $38,205.71. We ran into some difficulties working with the property management company and their attorney. And so this problem seemed to kind of stretch out for a long time. Ultimately, they said, okay, it's your bill, you guys have to pay it to the residents. So the residents asked to meet with us, and we met with them early spring. After discussing the issue, we agreed to inspect the building and see, based on, the consumption, kind of try to figure out what occurred. We saw evidence that there was a water-driven sump pump that was there, and the discharge for that went out to the storm sewer. So and the amount of consumption, there's a few different ways that people will have high water consumption. One of them is a water-driven sump pump. Your electrical sump pump fails, the water-driven sump pump takes over, and if you're not aware of it, it can use a substantial amount of water. The other one that's real common is a toilet. This consumption was just not in line with the volume of water that a running toilet would have. The important distinction there is if you have a toilet that's running, all that water is going down the sewer, we're paying for those sewer charges. If you've got a water-driven sump pump that's discharging to the stormwater system, we're not really getting that water, so we're not being charged for the sewer charges. So we felt, our people in the field felt comfortable that it was a water-driven sump pump that caused the problem. So our water and sewer clerical personnel calculated the bill based on historical use, and the correct amount due would be $13,996.94. There's a breakdown attached. We did discuss the fact that when we did try to work with the management company and the attorney, we ran into a lot of difficulty, and visited this property numerous times over a period of years. So a conservative estimate of our labor that we incurred, replacing the sending unit, inspecting, recalculating the bill, attorney expenses, a conservative estimate is 20 hours of labor that we really shouldn't have had to expend. And an estimate from the attorney was about $750 that we incurred in legal expenses. So we felt that it was justifiable to add that $1,750 to the amount that we would agree to. So ultimately, we're asking for the board to approve modifying the amount due from the Meadow Bridge Condominium Association from the $38,000 down to $38,205.71 down to $15,746.94. And this is the amount recommended and agreed to by the supervisor's office, Mr. Axtell and his staff. And we've also presented that figure to the Homeowners Association leadership at Meadow Bridge, and they're agreeable to that as well. Are there questions, or is there a motion?
I have one question. Water-powered sub pumps. I'm familiar with them. I've had them in both my last two houses. How long did that thing run to incur that amount? And now, why would you not be able to hear that thing running, or your sub pump? Now, were they out of town for 6 or 7
Yeah, no,
months?
this was a much more substantial period of time, and the Homeowners Association expressed their own frustration with the fact that one of their residents just basically ignored every attempt that we made to contact them as well as the management company. As a result of this complete lack of communication or response, we've number one, they've told us that they've switched management companies, and number two, they've given us contact information for their homeowners association leadership, so that in the event that a resident doesn't respond to a tagging and to repeated attempts to enter the home, that they can intervene so that this problem doesn't grow as long. Ultimately, the time that elapsed just meant in greater water consumption. They're still paying for the water. The issue is, we're looking at almost twice that much in sewer charges. So, this really was, the answer to your question is it appears to me, and I don't know the resident, I couldn't tell you who lived in this unit, but it appears to me that that individual just said, hey, it's not my problem, I don't pay my water bill, it's all rolled into my, association fees, so, don't bother me. And that's what the homeowners association leadership shared with us.
Sure. So, okay, thanks.
But in the end, this isn't really costing us anything. This
Right.
is really a neutral cost. We're saying we really didn't get the sewer, so we don't really, we're not being billed for it. We did deliver the water, and this is the charge for the water, and then we did incur some additional expenses, and we tried to cover that. Mr. Batkins?
No, I guess my only comment was, I mean, this goes back 5 years.
Yeah, it wasn't the entire period wasn't 5 years, but it goes back 5 years.
Yeah, I see that the usage cycles are on here is that an example as how it's written? Billing usage estimated 19.
That's the actual experience, like, these are all what happened to add up to the total.
And the reason why the clerical person, which she did a phenomenal job on this,
Over and above.
but she recreated this, and this is important because, let's just say that we estimated 20 units that whole time, but they really used an average of 35 units each billing cycle. Well, you really can't just say, okay, 15 times this period of time times this rate, because our rates change. So she basically averaged out what that overage was from the time that we lost a signal to the time that we got it, and put it on each one. That way, they would be getting billed for the actual consumption during that cycle. So you really can't say like, well, the sending unit failed in 2017, but you owe us 1,000 units and we're going to calculate it at 2022 rates. She did her best with a lot of labor to recreate this historically going all the way back to 17.
So it wasn't, what was the total that, what I would say is collectible? You gave a total, was it like 35,000 and some change?
Well, if we did nothing, it would be 30, if we just said it's too bad and this board doesn't
Yeah,
take
yeah.
action, they would owe us $38,205.71. So 38.2.
Okay, and then the 13,996 plus, did you say?
1750,
1750, and that's a total of,
15,746 and 94 cents.
okay, thank you.
So, but again,
We do a lot of this kind of stuff on a much smaller scale on a regular basis, where like if any of us or a homeowner had a water-driven sump pump that ran, they were out of town, and they came in and said like, hey, look what happened, we waive it.
right, we do have an existing policy, a board-adopted policy that requires approval from the Public Services Director and the 3 full-timers.
And they have to make a good faith effort to repair the problem, but this one's 23 grand, you can't.
Right,
The three of us aren't signing off on.
I'm not
23
comfortable
grand.
rolling on that substantial of a refund. I felt that really should require board action. I'm recommending it. This is in line with our policy. We don't normally have a fee for additional labor, but we also, I'm not gonna go too far into it, but this should have gone a lot smoother and it should have been resolved a lot, yeah. Mr. Ruth has a
Results in
book.
binder, it's a pain in the neck.
Right. When you have to devolve a binder, you're running into some hassle.
Is that a $1,700 binder?
It is for them.
So, what I thought I heard you say, Mr. Supervisor, is that 23 grand really wasn't a cost to the township.
Correct.
It's not costing the residents the delta.
Yeah, so really, and here's the way it works. We don't, on an individual unit basis, on an individual residence or building, we don't meter sewer. And that's not unique to us, that's true for
Right.
every municipality that I'm aware of, unless you're a large customer. Like, for example, we do meter sewer that flows from Selfridge Air Base. That's different, right? But if we sell you 10 units of water, our sewer rates are structured on the basis that a majority of those 10 units of water came back to us in the form of sewer, and it contributes to our sewer charges. If you have, say, for example, a sprinkler meter installed, you could have a separate meter installed at your home, and then there are no sewer charges to that because we inspect that and it gets attached only to your hose bibs or to a water-driven sump pump, or you could use it for the purpose of filling your pool, so that we have a structure for that. In the past, when water rates were so much lower, there were buildings that were constructed and folks really said, well, what's the difference? Just put in a water-driven sump pump, and I'm not gonna have a separate domestic sprinkler meter for it. So one of our requirements is if we do have an issue like this with a homeowner, we say, hey, why don't you consider putting in a sprinkler meter, hooking this up? That way, you'll never have to ask for a refund of the sewer charges, because there are no sewer charges associated with sprinkler meter. In this case, what we're saying is we think that water flowed out to a stormwater system. It's an encapsulated system, so where you might have, say you have a sump pump discharge in your backyard and you're on a canal, you can hear it running, and you say to yourself, why is this thing flowing? Or you have it going out the side of your house. In the case of this condo development, all of their storm sewers are underground, so it leaves the building and it never touches the ground. It just goes right into an underground system. So it also kind of was evidential that you wouldn't really know that this thing was running because it's just going out the basement, discharging out a pipe and going into the stormwater system, and there's no cost for that, so.
And you mentioned, outside spigots, sprinklers, and water-driven,
Sump pump.
sump pumps can be hooked up. And it wasn't hooked up to a separate meter.
Correct.
At this point.
Correct.
Okay, maybe they
And when
should
this
think
was,
about that.
and well, and that's, and when our policy addresses that when we deal with an individual homeowner. When you're dealing with a condo association,
bit more.
and when you consider when this was built, they do have a sprinkler meter, but it's literally hooked to their sprinklers, and they don't have, it's not plumbed to each individual building for the purposes of providing a water-driven
Understood.
backup.
Okay.
But say, for example, if a homeowner comes in with this problem, one of the things we'll say is, you know, we'd prefer that you put in a sprinkler meter if you're gonna keep this water-driven sump pump, because then we know we'll never have to give you, you'll never pay for this again, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion or questions, or is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to, is it settle?
It says to approve $15,746.94 as the past due amount for Meadow Bridge Building 9. That was the
That's my
suggested
motion.
motion.
Yes.
Okay, good. Is there support? Is there
I'll
support?
support the motion.
Okay, good. Once, ultimately, I'm asking for the permission to accept that as the payment. Once we do that, the homeowners association had asked for, you know, the potential to maybe make a couple of payments because it's a large sum and they've got a bucket of money. And we've got a process for that, but I can't accept something less than $38,000 we felt without
Right.
this board approval. So I think the motion is satisfactory. We've had a fair amount of discussion. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll open the floor for public comment.
Board members, C. William Bardell, 25-year resident. So the complex had a water-driven sub pump. Is that because they didn't want the electrical sub pump for the noise? I'm just wondering, just not to get too much into the weeds, but usually these water-driven sub pumps are for backup in case of power failure. You would have the electrical, then you'd have the battery backup. Then if that went down, then you'd have the water-driven. I'm just wondering, again, not to get in the weeds too much, but is there a reason why that is it 100% water-driven? Because I know the pumps are usually like 1 gallon, they move 20 gallons of sub-pump water. You know, depending on what you got. So as far as efficiency, the water-driven sump pumps really use a lot of water. So I'm just wondering, was this their main source of sump pump? Because I don't know. It doesn't really, to me, it doesn't make sense. Usually, your water-driven sump pumps is a backup if you have a prolonged power outage. So not to get in the weeds too much, could you school me on that just a little bit? Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. The resident asked why did they have a water-driven sump pump? It was a backup. They did not have a battery backup, but when their electric sump pump failed, the water sump pump took over. The resident of that particular unit, because it's a multi-story unit and the sump pump is in the basement, they just weren't aware of it and really didn't care because they didn't pay the water bill. So it was explained to us, and our investigation revealed that at some point the electric pump failed. The water pump was the primary pump, and as you mentioned, I think I understood, they're not a very efficient pump. It uses substantial gallons of water to move 1 gallon of storm water. So it is, which was also evidential for us because the amount of water that they consumed, this would just be it's just not going through a toilet. I mean, typically a water-driven sump pump is at least a 3/4 inch line, and you don't normally have that size of a line for your toilet, so. Hopefully that answered the question. Any other discussion, board members? Hearing none, we have a motion by Mr. Batkins with support by Mr. Olgiati to accept the payment of $15,000.
$746.94.
So $15,746.94 is the past due amount for Meadow Bridge Building 9. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next on our agenda, item F3 regarding the sidewalk ordinance. Board members, we've had previous discussions regarding a sidewalk ordinance. Mr. Axtell and his staff have assembled examples from neighboring communities that have sidewalk ordinances which require property owners to maintain and repair or replace their sidewalks. I did include in our board packet examples from Mount Clemens, Clinton Township, Chesterfield Township, and St. Clair Shores. In each of those communities, there's some differences, but if you have a sidewalk that needs maintenance, you're notified and you have a certain amount of time. It varies. If you don't fix it within a certain period of time, the municipality has the right to go in and fix it and then charge you for the cost. So attached is a draft sidewalk ordinance that Mrs. Davis prepared for us. I highlighted, between her and I highlighted several sections that I think are worth us talking about. We talked about this, I think, in a workshop in the past. When we talked about it, or I should say since we talked about it, I've gotten different feedback from various board members, enough so that I wasn't comfortable just saying, okay, here's the ordinance and here's what we're going to do. But the draft ordinance that's before us is predicated on my assumption that if every contiguous community around us, and I'm sure there are others, but every community that touches Harrison Township, to our townships, to our cities, they all have a sidewalk ordinance that requires that repair to be done by the homeowner or property owner. So we included those examples. We have the draft ordinance. There are a couple of sections that I highlighted that I wanted to have some discussion on. Obviously, I want to have feedback and deliberations with the board. What I didn't want to do is prepare the ordinance, put it on here in a more formal process like the clerk's office does, and just kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, cram it down everybody's throat. Just, with that, I don't know if there's questions, discussion, or if we can go through the highlighted areas in the ordinance itself.
Might want to go through the highlighted, because I've got some comments and questions.
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
Maybe we can get through as we go, if that's okay.
Yeah, so Rosemary had included paved bicycle path, paved hike bike trail. I think that's really that's a little bit different. I think those sorts of paths have historically been maintained and repaired by the township, so I struck that section. That was a decision that I brought because I didn't really feel like, a 10-foot path is something different than a 5 or 6 foot sidewalk. So that was my proposed revision to her ordinance. So that's the first point. On page 93 of the board packet, kind of addresses failure to comply. Proposing that we give you 60 days to do it. If you don't do it in the 60 days, we'll go out, do the work, and tack on a fee for oversight, which is basically, for lack of a better word, maybe an administration fee or a penalty, kind of a way of encouraging the homeowner to either fix that, and then further down, we can discuss having a program to either help augment that cost or to have a program to say, if someone says, hey, look, I really can't participate, but I recognize I have 4 flags of cement in front of my home that need repair. I'll agree to pay and participate. Okay, so in other words, basically, if you ignore us, we're going to fix it, fine you. If you're willing to repair it, then we move forward and either you do it yourself or we work with you in some fashion.
I had two comments on this section. One, I think where it says next succeeding tax assessment roll, and maybe there's some clarification,
What-
A.
A?
Yep.
Okay.
I would think we would want to just clarify that that's our winter roll, so Larry's not doing sidewalks in the summer as
Gotcha.
well. That's when we do our assessments. And I don't know if it matters from a legal standpoint, but just for clarification, I think it's easier.
Yeah, that's fine. So we would say, that would be 2A winter tax.
Yeah.
Would be your suggestion.
Yep, or if there's better wording that defines the township
Yeah.
tax assessment or whatever, I just.
Yeah, and we can always address that, and then when we do look at a more formal adoption, should the board choose to move it forward, we can have that by then.
The other thing is, I think there should be a difference in the administrative fee between a failure to comply and a contact the township contractor. Like, if you're a partner with us, I'm willing to say, like, yeah, it's 15%, or, you know what I mean, like, that's.
Well, no, it's zero. So C says if you don't do it.
Without the I'm sorry,
without
I
the
missed
assessment.
the-
Yeah.
I just
So what we're
played
saying
the-
is if you come to us and say, hey, listen,
Yeah.
I'll do my fair share, one way or another, whether we do that work or whether we contract that work, we're just gonna say,
Got it.
you pay only your share. So
I'm
if
sorry,
you-
I glazed
yeah.
over that.
No, that's okay. That was, so the idea was, is
Yeah, yeah.
either we hit you with a stick because you ignore us, or, because I don't want to do that. I wanna work with the
Right,
resident,
100%.
right? Yeah. And then number 4 on there would be may authorize. In other words, if the board felt, whether it be today or sometime in the future, that they wanted to budget a certain amount to say, we're gonna, you know, I guess you might think of it as a potential grant program. I'm not saying that we should or shouldn't include number 4, but if we were to keep item number 4 in this proposed ordinance, it's permissive, meaning we may authorize expenditures. Could leave it. If the board has no interest in contributing, then I don't know that we need number 4. But the idea would be that if number 4 is in there, and the board were to say, yeah, we're gonna budget 20 grand a year, and then we'll pool all the repairs, it could become difficult to manage and oversee. So, you know, but it was, I think it was kind of included as a potential example of what some other ordinances might have. I think it's, as soon as you include it, I'm gonna say, well, hey, when are you gonna kick some money? Oh, we're not. Well, then what'd you put item 4 in your ordinance for? So there's some question as to whether we should have item 4.
Can I just make a comment on that? I think that needs to be cut and dry. Number 4 gives you way too much gray area, and I don't know how you would disperse those funds. Let's say there's $20,000 a year.
Right, but it would,
Funds, how are you
right.
gonna, you're gonna be accused of playing favoritism or whatever, whoever gets their sidewalks fixed or help with the township, and
Sure.
the rest of the people have to pay full price for it.
Right.
I just think that's gonna create a real,
It was written saying that this, in other words, in essence, it was permissive, saying if this board chooses to, they can do that. Now, I, to be honest with you, if the board said, hey, we're gonna throw money in there and this ordinance wasn't in there, or this section, I'm kinda looking to the attorney, but I'm not sure that it would, that striking number 4 somehow precludes us from offering money if we wanted to in the future. I'm comfortable striking 4, but.
Right, where it is helpful is a situation where you have a gap, maybe for whatever reason, and the sidewalk is not completed, vacant lot or something like that, and it's in the township's best interest to authorize the sidewalk to be built. So I've seen communities do it that way, not by way of board, but they have a special sidewalk committee that makes recommendation to do it, so that's one option. But just to go to your point, you could strike 4 and still do that.
That's what I kind of feel, yeah. Yeah, so if it were me as one board member, I'm comfortable moving forward with this ordinance, striking number 4. And I'm kind of looking for a feedback from other board members to see how they might feel.
So if we strike that, then it's up to us at some future point to say
If we want.
we will or we won't.
Yeah.
So in an isolated incident, so it doesn't necessarily have to be, it could be brought into any meeting.
Yeah, so let's say that we move forward with this, we adopted this, and next year, we identified several sidewalks that needed repair, and we brought them forward, and, you know, we're gonna contract with the ABC company, and this is their flat price, and we've identified a section from this point to this point that we believe is really the township's responsibility. So I'm gonna ask the board to pay for segment A, and then the rest of the segments will be $125 per flag.
Okay.
Okay,
For the
so,
rest
so it basically selective,
Yeah, so we would be,
Based on-
we can always come back and do number 4.
okay?
But, like, to Mr. Hu's point, including it having a committee, now you're empowering someone else, you know, I don't think we need to have
But I could
that.
see like the DDA says, we're gonna repair some sidewalks with our money because it's beneficial to the district.
Sure.
You know, but that's, you know, like, oh, it's the property owners. No, the DDA wants to do it, and we wanna do it with stamped concrete, and it looks pretty. Okay, cool,
absolutely.
that's a different way to.
Right, but I think we can always, I mean, we're here twice a
that's
month, we can always talk about that if we need to and bring that back. I don't think I need to build it in here.
Right.
And then, the waiver of payments on page 94, the building official or any other person authorized by the Township Board of Trustees may, upon timely request of an owner, waive the payment of such expenses, costs, and fees, if it shouldn't, ought to be waived because of hardship. Again, that's a big old wide open thing.
Yeah, and I don't like the way it's written.
Yeah, the building official, now I just gave him the
Right,
authority.
it's the building official or any other person, it doesn't say not the building official, so the building official could still do it, right? It's not.
Correct.
You know, like, I know David served on, and I've served on, like, the hardship board where we say, we ask you for our waste hauler, we ask for documentation that says, hey, here's my financial hardship, that board reviews it and makes a recommendation, yay or nay.
Right, and again, if this is going to be, this contract, this ordinance doesn't establish, you know, we're gonna use the ABC Construction Company to do sidewalk repairs. We're gonna have to engage with someone, and if I'm gonna be spending that on some recurring basis, I put it on the agenda and we approve it. If we say, hey, look, you know, we did a water main break in front of Mr. Smith's house, and he replaced his driveway himself, so we're gonna waive his sidewalk repairs, I can bring that to you and explain that to you at that time. I don't feel like this ordinance has to be built in such a way that there's a mechanism for waiving payments.
I think it should address that there is a method for it, and that the board will adopt it by policy, similar to how we've done. The board will adopt a policy that governs how hardship claims are heard. What you're saying is like a stake of ownership, which I think is different than a financial hardship.
No, I guess what I'm saying is this, I'm really not interested in having a mechanism for hardship, but if one comes along, I'm only gonna spend money, use this ordinance by bringing it back to this board. So I'm gonna add, in other words, if there's ever a waiver of a payment, this board can decide that. I don't think
No, I
this
know,
is
but
gonna
I
be
don't-
something I do regularly. The hardship is something built into our contract and we do it on an annual basis.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, like, I would feel uncomfortable talking somebody's personal financials up here to say whether or not they qualify. Nah, I know he owns a Corvette, he doesn't get it. Like, I don't wanna be doing that as 7 people here.
I understand.
That's the nice thing about that hardship board, is they sort of have a little, it's public, but they have a little bit more privacy. It's not our main meeting.
Sure, and I understand.
And I'm not saying
that.
we're gonna happen a lot, but I think in the beginning, it will.
Well, I don't know, I can't speak to that frequency. Again, though, I think this is more of a situation where if we encounter something, I could ask the board for that. I don't think we have to discuss someone's personal financials at this table. If I were to say, the 3 full-time officials met and reviewed this, and we're recommending that when we approve this bunch of work, that the township assume this cost, you know, you can always say, hey, we're gonna table it, and we wanna go investigate ourselves, or whatever, but I don't feel like the ordinance has to have that mechanism.
No, but I just think when you're talking about requiring some people to do it and having a potential method for waiving it for other people, there should be clear guidelines.
Which is why I don't want any mechanism for waiving anything, just like I like the notion of striking number 4. I don't wanna talk about us kicking in, I don't wanna talk about hardship in this ordinance. This ordinance to me says, if you got a sidewalk, you have to fix it. If you fix it timely, you're cool. If you agree to work with us, you're cool. If not, we're gonna fine you. We're gonna charge you an administrative fee, period. If we get into this and we find, gosh, we're running into a problem with hardship, or we think we should kick in some money, or, you know, always come back and modify the ordinance. I'm just not,
Ordinance needs to be fluid.
yeah, I'm not comfortable talking about a waiver of payments in here and empowering anybody to do it. If I use this for a year or two and we want to form a sidewalk committee, because I'm not excited about this. This is, you know, extra work. This is conflict between me and a resident, or between our ordinance officer and a resident or a property owner. And, you know, well, this is unfair. Well, if I can point to the fact, hey, all of our neighbors do this, this is a pretty common ordinance, this is what you need to do, you know. But right now, I don't know how much of a headache, I don't know how much of a need there will be for hardship. So I'm uncomfortable building it in. That's just my 2 cents.
So if we remove that, we have to remove the reference to that in E.
I think it's that A4.
No, the A4 is above us.
Oh.
That's the A4,
Let me look here.
I think. No, it's not A4, it's D4.
A4, okay, A4,
CD.
A4 is, okay, that's under 18-400, okay.
Yeah,
Okay, sorry about that.
that's all right. So for me, I'm comfortable striking number 4 on page 94, which addresses waiver of payments. So unless I get something different, that's how I'll bring this back to the board for adoption.
Ken, are you making those changes or are we?
I'm making notes and I'll communicate it to Rosemary. So that's on my, you don't have to, you know,
I get it.
yeah, I'm okay with that. And that's what I got. That's what I see on this. So I don't believe we need to take action right here as a board, but I wanted to have some deliberation, and I didn't want to bring a proposal to the board and have this board say, wait a minute. So I basically used the neighboring ordinances and reference to kind of say, this is what everybody else is doing. And we have some variables in these other areas that were highlighted. We've talked about those. Unless I hear something back, the next agenda is going to have clarification on item 2A, saying that it'll go on the winter taxes, and it'll reflect striking number 4 from page 93 and 94.
So I would just kind of read over the different communities, and I didn't see anything in there about waiver of payments in the other communities. Was there anything in there that I missed in the other communities for waiver of payments? Is that just something we just added to it?
So
For our residents?
when Rosemary drafted this ordinance, she put some, like, knowing that this was new, she said, hey, some communities do this, some communities do that. I've reformatted this a little bit because she had little notes, do you want to do this, and things like that. So, so some of the things that were included were, hey, these are variables that the board can consider. And this was, so this is, I don't know if maybe it's not the right word, but this is the most liberal. This is like everything all thrown in. This is all 64 crayons in one box. We might only want 32 of them.
Right.
So,
So E4, waiver of payments, that's going away as well?
I would propose, yeah, I am going, when it comes back, I'm gonna strike that. That'll be removed.
Okay.
And again, if the board says, hey, I feel strong, you should, you know, tell me now. Like I said, I really didn't want to just shove this in front of
I'm
everybody.
okay with that. I mean, if something happens and it can be surely proven and there's a legitimate hardship, I mean, I think we can, you know, I mean, we can
We'll figure
take
that out
care
when
of-
we run it.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's how I feel as well. This is something new. I don't want to complicate it.
Right.
We'll see how well it goes, and we can adjust it as time goes on. So,
Is the sidewalk in the right of way?
in some cases, yes, not in every case. That's hard to say. Blank sheet of paper, new construction, typically yes. But there are places where that's not the case.
So from a liability standpoint, I think we had a lawsuit last year, a couple of years ago, where a young lady fell in front of someone else's house because of maybe an elevated slab, and maybe it wasn't, but there was a lawsuit against the township.
Correct, which led to a settlement.
Yeah, which led to a settlement. That still stays in place?
Yeah, I don't know that, I'll say this, having a sidewalk ordinance, having a more robust program of repairing sidewalks probably minimizes our liability, or helps
Reduces it.
reduces our
Yeah.
liability. Not having a program probably increases your liability, because there's a perception that if I were to go to trial, you know, I'm gonna make the argument, you've got a responsibility for sidewalks. Hey, I'm walking down the street, I don't know if it's in the right of way or not. It's a sidewalk, and there's case law that supports this. I believe it was a few years back that the state legislature or something at a state level changed sidewalks from being road dependent to community dependent, but this is the result of some things changing that were outside of our control that have shifted some more responsibility to us, as I understand it.
Okay.
And again, now we look and say, okay, well, every contiguous community has some example of this ordinance and we don't. You know, from a liability perspective, you say, well, you guys are doing nothing. Heck, everybody else has something in place.
Yeah, I think when this came up last time, I mentioned, when this was drafted, I would like to have seen some changes to our ordinances regarding boulevard trees that are required in subdivisions when they go in. We essentially tell the homeowners or the developer, you have to plant a tree, okay? Trees, most of the time, are top rooters because they're less expensive trees. I can almost speak from experience. So we didn't touch that ordinance. I don't see any language in here about removing that language from our ordinance. That's my first point. And I don't know from a overall perspective, I toured Orchid. That sidewalk on both sides of the street is in need of, not repair, but replacement.
There's large sections.
Large sections that-
As a percentage of the total sidewalk, it's a two-digit number as a
Yes.
percentage.
Yeah, so, and I guess that's where I start to struggle a little bit with it. I have sidewalks in front of my house. Personally, I don't have a problem paying for sidewalk repairs, but to do it now, to tell the residents, well, if you live and your sidewalk needs to be replaced, we've done it in the past, now we're just not gonna do it anymore. So if there's a date where we're gonna fix every sidewalk in the township, then I think we enact this. I think it's something that we look at, saying, okay, from June 1st, 2023, we're gonna have all the sidewalks repaired. Maybe, you know, I'm just spitballing, so please just bear with me. Because I think to ask that now, while we let sidewalks and just, I don't want to say, we couldn't get to everything. We were busy with other things. Our guys are for water and sewer, not pouring sidewalks. I get that. I agree with it, but I agree with it at a certain time. Because there are sidewalks out there that probably could be replaced and maybe they couldn't, but so now we're going to ask the residents to take that on. The other part of that is, how much have we spent the last 5 years on sidewalk repairs?
I don't know.
That would be a number that I would like to know, because if it comes down to we're spending 20 or 30 grand a year in sidewalk repairs.
Yeah, I would say it's less than that. I think we on average, we've budgeted $5,000, maybe $10,000 on sidewalk repairs. I don't think it's been that much.
But we haven't repaired them all,
Oh,
because
no,
we
no,
just haven't
but-
been able to get to it.
Well, so I would say that there's a combination of, for example, Orchid as a street, has, those problems didn't pop up recently.
No.
But they were not on my radar until recently. So
Mine
within-
either.
Right,
So,
within the last.
Transparency.
Yeah, with, probably since, we had some discussion about this starting in the fall, about areas that, and there are areas that we're aware of. We've done some temporary repairs, things
Yep.
like that. But if we as a township choose, if this board chooses to say, all right, everything that we're aware of, we're gonna fix, you know, we're probably talking about a six-figure expenditure.
I would bet, based on even just that street alone is a big ticket item, because you've got big trees undercutting all those sidewalks. And that leads me to my next point is, we're getting ready, we're putting a bid package together for the bike path, right? And there's residents that use that every day, and there's non-residents that use that every day.
Sure.
So I brought it up last time, I'm only echoing what I said. If we're not taking people's phone numbers and addresses from the beginning of the trail to the end, then why are we charging other neighbors? And I know it's a bike path, I know it serves a totally different purpose. I look forward to it being redone, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
But I just look at it from that perspective. And lastly,
I don't know that I followed that last thought. I don't think.
my point of that whole thing is, we're, the taxpayers of Harrison Township potentially could be paying for bike path repairs. Either money we're gonna get grants, or wherever that money.
Absolutely, yeah,
So
yeah.
the residents are gonna pay for that.
Yeah.
And the residents of the streets that need the sidewalk repairs are under the same thing. People use those sidewalks to gain access to the path, in some cases, right? People ride bikes on my sidewalk, I'm guessing they're going somewhere other than around the block, but that's neither here nor there. So I guess my point is, we're gonna spend the money there, but we're gonna say, well, we wanna put this ordinance in place now because we really don't wanna pay for sidewalks that have not gotten repaired in the last 5, 10 years. The bike path was mentioned in here, and we struck it. We struck it for a reason, right?
Well,
Because-
but again, part of this is, if I take 10 municipalities and all 10 municipalities do X, I've got to have a pretty good reason to come to you and say, well, we're going to do something different than all of our peers. I'm saying to you that based on the sidewalks that are in the township, a majority of the neighborhoods don't have sidewalks,
A good majority of it.
right?
Yep.
But the bike path system has been engineered to try to reach as many neighborhoods or connect to as much as possible. It is regional. If I go to a neighboring community and I ride on their bike path, hey, I got away with one because I didn't pay for Clinton Township's bike path if I choose to go to Freedom Hill, right? So there are some things that, it gets into the whole notion of roads, local roads. Hey, you want to repave your road? That's an SAD. That's a local issue. These are concepts like at a higher level of how to do them, which is the reason I brought this, the reason we're having this discussion. Hey, look, we've got a problem with sidewalks. I heard some resistance from the board about the notion that property owners should pay for sidewalk repairs, but the reality is all of our neighbors do it the same way. So if this board wants to do it different, that's cool.
Do all our neighbors fix roads?
To our cities and to our townships?
So do they?
Yeah, the townships.
Because Elm Street's falling in, we can't take a fire truck down.
That's a private road. That's a
So
totally
that's a
different
totally different
issue.
thing?
Completely different issue.
Whole different
It is a
business.
radically different issue.
Why? It's not a
It's a private
safety
road.
issue?
Because I don't fix your driveway.
Yeah, am I gonna come in and fix your kitchen sink? Where does the line between a local responsibility of the government versus private? If it's a condominium association, if the pavement on the other side of Dean's Gate fails, should I go in and fix it?
No, but if a fire truck falls in with all our guys in it because they can't get down that road, you think that anybody's gonna care that we thought it was a private road? All I'm saying is I get that it's
It's
you
a
reminded me of
complicated
the
issue.
private road.
Yeah, it's a
But that's
complicated
one
issue.
road. Let's talk about any road. The end of North Point that was carpet bombed, right?
Yeah.
So
But
maybe.
that one's different also because it's really a collector road. It's not like a local road. There's a lot of nuances to this. My point is we have not repaved a local road, but we've worked with DOR and neighborhoods to try to do it as efficiently as possible. But if you live in Clinton Township or Chesterfield Township or Harrison Township, you ain't getting your road repaved unless you participate. That's the way it is. If you live in a city, the rules are different because the money flow is different. So I can't compare Mount Clemens and St. Clair Shores to a township because they get their own money. They have their own road departments, and typically they have a tax structure that's much higher. So there's so many differences there, I can't compare those. What I find interesting, though, is that I've got 4 neighboring communities, 2 of which are townships, 2 of which are cities, and regardless of those differences in the different tax structure, they all treat sidewalks the same, which was, to me, something I felt evidential to bring to this board in asking you to adopt this ordinance, to say, I know it seems odd because, hey, we do this, but we don't do that, but the reality is, considering the differences of cities and townships, all 4 of them treat sidewalks the same way. If it's your resident, you gotta fix it.
So I would almost bet when the sidewalks started to be repaired by the residents in all these communities, that they weren't put in the way some of our conditions are. So in other words, the city or the township turned over a functional sidewalk and said, this is your problem now. I would bet and maybe that's not the case, but so I'm just trying to drive the point home about Orchid, right? That Orchid is in bad shape. Just one example, I don't know anybody that lives on that street.
Yeah, it's not personal,
Right, it's just a comment that if it's something that functions, then I see and I would understand and I would agree with, okay, now it's your problem, you deal with it. My sidewalks are good, I did have some replaced a few years back, but it leads me to what I said last time is, the township pays for Phragmites and spraying dirt roads, okay? So when we start picking and choosing what we're gonna pay for, I think we should look at what if we're gonna say this is what our surrounding communities do, I would like some data that says, and I could probably gather it myself from not asking anyone to do this homework, does any other township or city spray dirt roads? And do they charge the residents? And does any other community spray for Phragmites? Because I
The
know.
answer is yes and yes, so I can tell you that.
Okay.
We're not unique in participating in the brine program, that's a county program, and they put it out to the townships.
I would assume.
Right, so as an example, go north in Macomb County, the county has a different program there, they have a gravel program. They don't offer it to the southern townships, but the northern townships that have major mile roads, that might be 50-mile-per-hour roads and they're gravel, they have a similar program to the brine program where they partner with the municipality to re-gravel, to add gravel to roads. So that, meaning that, you know, what the county offers us, they offer Clinton and Macomb and, you know, so forth. And the other one is Phragmites, yeah, so we're a part of a SISMA, and Shelby Township's a member of the SISMA, Washington Township's a member of the SISMA, Chesterfield Township is in the SISMA, so they all participate in Phragmite spraying.
So I don't have Phragmites in my yard, but I'm paying for Phragmites. And I live on I live on a.
True, I don't have any kids at school, I pay school taxes.
My
I
only
put 6 of
point
them
is-
through.
My only point is when we say it, when we play one side, hey, everybody around us does it, we should look at really the whole point.
Sure.
Because we can't say, I think Mr. Witt said, well, I don't fix your driveway. I wouldn't expect anybody to fix my driveway.
Right.
Right, but you were talking specifically about.
Yeah, about a private,
private
yeah.
road.
No, my only point is, if, I feel that this ordinance, if we don't change anything about the trees, anything about requirements, I can't support this. I agree that we have to do something, and I don't want our water and sewer guys putting in sidewalks. I don't want that. But I would really like a clean starting point, if we can come to some type of, this is the clean, rip the Band-Aid off, and then we would do it, then I would support it.
So help me to understand what you would need to be able to support this adoption of this ordinance.
A sidewalk survey, have we done that?
No.
I think we should start with a sidewalk survey. We just spent, I don't know how much money with Wade Trim to do a bike path survey.
It was $5,000.
Yeah, so what's the cost to do a sidewalk survey?
I have no idea.
You know, maybe we should look at that, and maybe, let's say hypothetically, let's say it's $80,000, whatever, probably not, to fix all the sidewalks to the point where they all function the way they're supposed to. How would this board look at it? Would it make sense to spend the $80,000 to do it?
No.
Yeah,
Well, that's one.
Right, you asked.
Right, me personally, what I would be willing to do would be this, I guess, not willing to do, but maybe to help address this. We're moving forward with the idea of having a bid proposal, bid specification for the bike path.
Yep.
I have no problem trying to identify areas that we're aware of that have sidewalk issues and have that incorporated that as a separate line item in the bid specification. We can send it out for bid, we can see what those numbers come in at, and this board can make that determination. If the number was $5,000, I don't think anyone has a problem. If the number was $2 million, I think everybody'd have a problem.
I would have a problem.
Right, somewhere between $5,000 and $2 million is the problem. But I can't give you that number, but I have no problem saying, hey, Dave, can you reach out and let, here's some areas we identified. He may come back and say, well, contractors will typically give you a unit price for sidewalks, and you just tag them. I don't mind pursuing that cost. It doesn't change the need to have this ordinance in place. Right now, we have more liability, and we have no system of fixing it. So what's a good system of fixing it? Well, if everybody around us does it this way, to me, that's a reasonable way to bring to this board to say, here's a mechanism for fixing sidewalks. Adopting this ordinance doesn't preclude us from changing a tree ordinance. But ignoring it doesn't fix the sidewalks. So saying I'm not gonna fix the sidewalks because I didn't fix the trees, to me, is counterproductive. Go to planning commission and say, hey, we want you to change your ordinance on trees because it's creating problems with sidewalks. Similarly, not knowing how much it is to fix all the other sidewalks makes it difficult for me to make a decision. But there's really nothing stopping us from getting that price when we go out for the bike pass. And then this board can, if it's $5,000, great. If it's $2 million, can't do it. Somewhere between there is the point that everybody says, I'm willing to do it. But for us to deliberate about that cost when we don't know what it is, it's tough to do. So I feel like if we knew that number, it would be easier to make that decision.
So you mentioned cost. I didn't see in our proposal, and I might have missed it because we've read all the other ones. Do we have an estimate of what a 5x5 slab would cost or whatever?
The only estimate we could go with, I feel, well,
Well, I can give you a ballpark estimate based on, like, what, I mean, we got a bid for Union Lake, and like, I can pull what that square footage cost is. So it depends on if we're replacing base, if we have trees to remove and that kind of stuff. But
So there's like an ABC level or something that we might have to charge the resident.
well, I was just gonna say, so in St. Clair Shores, I think they had a flat number per
it's like
flag.
100 and.
They
I
did.
thought it was 160.
Yeah.
I was just looking to see if I could find it easily or not.
I thought it was like 145 or something.
4-inch sidewalk is they have a 4-inch sidewalk, remove and replace, $628 a square foot. 6-inch existing, remove and replace, $716. 8-inch, $946.
And I-
Remove of concrete and backfill with topsoil, $2.86. Mud jacking, $103 or $115 a slab.
All right, so going back to these people on Orchid, if a homeowner has, how many slabs would that be in front of their house? 5, 6?
Yeah, but it's typically that, so let's say this, yeah.
8 slabs, once you take the driveway out.
Okay, so
Right, but 8 slabs, if you were to walk Orchid, what you'd see is that everywhere there's a tree, you probably have 2 to 3 slabs screwed up. So you might not have any in front of your home, Dean might have 2, Larry might have 1.
All right, so my point is, what do you think the average homeowner on Orchid is gonna owe once we instill this?
Under
enact
$1,000.
this?
$0 to $500, I'd have to guess.
Okay,
Shooting from
so
the hip to
about
give you.
$500. So,
But it
Now
probably
you're
not,
gonna
typically not $500.
okay, but if it's 500, let's just say it's $500. Doesn't sound like it's the end of the world, but it's a burden on people. So the question is here is, we said we'd put it on the tax. How long do they have to pay for that? Do they have a year to spread this out, or they have to pay it at that moment that the tax?
Well, in
goes?
Well, I
theory,
think some
3
of
years.
some of the
but-
communities give them an invoice and give them I think Mount Clemens gives them a discount if they pay right away,
I
and if
saw
it goes
that.
on the tax bills, they have more. Because I don't think we would say like, hey, we repaired it, and then 6 months later, put it on the tax bill, right?
No, but I mean,
Like,
if
they
I-
would have an idea when it happened in the spring, that, hey, this is coming in your winter, so you'd have some amount of months.
They'd be to 14 months.
Right.
But yeah,
Well,
so like
not
a
even- no,
special
maybe
assessment.
No,
the-
6 months.
Yeah, we're not proposing to do a special assessment with this. That doesn't preclude us from doing that, if that's how we
But I'm
wanted to
just
handle
wondering
this.
if people need up to a year to pay, is there like a 2 or 5% surcharge or
So,
something?
so for example, we could take this on, and we could say that if you agree to work with us, and we repair it, we could say, typically, sidewalk repairs are gonna be done during the summer. And the winter tax bill is December 1st. There's nothing precluding this board from saying, we're gonna give you, if I do the work in July, I could give you, not till December, I could give you till the following December to pay, if that's what this board wants to do. So we could do something like that. In other words, we could say, look, we're in front of your home, you spent $400, you agreed to sign up for it, you can give us 4 payments of $100. Or if you wanna finance it, you gotta give us 4 payments of $110, or, so we get to make the ordinance how we want. We don't have to say either pay us now or we're putting it on your tax
Well,
December
that's my
1st.
point, does it need to be in this ordinance?
Yes.
I think there needs to be,
So I think
well,
we need
I'll look to
some of
Mr. Huth on that. Let's say this, it would definitely need to be a board-adopted ordinance or policy or resolution if we were gonna do something other than pay me or I put it on your tax. If we're gonna say you can have 15 months to pay or a year to pay, and if you don't pay in a year, then it goes on the tax, that would need to be in the ordinance, right?
Or by board resolution, some sort of action.
Right, right. So if the ordinance, if we wanted to do something like that, if I go back to the ordinance where it talks about, where was it that it would go on the taxes, was 2A.
93.
Well, it was 2A, I think, I
That's
thought.
93.
Yeah, page 93.
93? Okay. No, I thought it was the winter tax thing was
It's right-
2A.
It's 2A, it's right there. It's the last sentence.
Okay,
Special levy
gotcha,
bill.
gotcha. So, so this failure to comply.
But it does say, it does give us, if you look at 2C, it says, The township may allow the payment for such repairs made by voluntary election of the landowner to be made over time, subject to terms and conditions set by the
Gotcha.
board. So we already have that authority, Paul.
So if we were to adopt this ordinance, this board could pass a resolution saying, we give you 12 months to pay. And if you don't pay in 12 months, then it rolls to the winter tax bill.
I
whenever
thought
that
you were
would be.
deleting the stuff in yellow, but
No.
you're,
No.
no, okay, you're
Nope.
just, like, you're deleting number 4.
Correct.
Okay.
But item 2C, I just wanted to make sure this board was aware of it.
I see.
So item 2, or section 2C says the board can adopt a resolution to allow that payment over a period of time. So if we said, hey, here's what this looks like, and we dealt with 10 sidewalk repairs with 10 residents, and 8 of them are saying they need time to pay. We can come back at that time, once we use this ordinance and say, we're really running into this. I'd like this board to adopt a resolution that says, from the time the work is completed, the resident has 12 months to pay. If at that time they don't pay, then there's a 10% penalty and it goes on their taxes. So you agree with me in July to do it. I repair it in July. We go a whole year next July and you've ignored me since then. Maybe this board says, well, if you don't pay in the 12 months, there's a 10% penalty or a 25% penalty or whatever. This ordinance would give us the freedom to adopt that resolution without having to
Okay.
modify the ordinance.
All right, thank you.
And I do think this ordinance tracks, I understand your point, Mr. Batkins, but like, a couple years ago, we adopted, hey, you must shovel your snow ordinance.
It's in here, yeah.
I mean, shoveling your snow in the end is gonna cost somebody more, and we told people to do it. If you had to pay somebody, then replacing a flag of sidewalk every 10 years would ever cost you. I mean, this isn't foreign that we do something like this.
Yeah, there's a certain responsibility associated with owning property.
Right. And again, that was the same thought of adopting that ordinance was reducing liability and you know what I mean? And trying to make sure that these things are taken care of.
Rob, are we exposed to additional liability if we don't have an ordinance in place?
Yes.
Yes, that's what, I was gonna ask the same question. It seems like liability is coming up a lot. So let's say sidewalks are identified in front of your house that need to be replaced, and the homeowner does not replace those sidewalks in a timely manner. Is the township still open for liability if somebody trips and hurts themselves on that, or is the homeowner responsible for liability?
Well, a homeowner could be responsible, that I'm not gonna get into.
Right.
But we have a responsibility to identify
Right.
it, flag it, block it off, mark it within a certain period of time. If a sidewalk fails in front of your home tonight and I don't know about it, there's a question as to whether or not I could be liable for it.
Sure.
But if it fails for 5 years and I didn't do anything about it, the longer it's in a state of disrepair, the more that liability transfers to the township. And as soon as someone notifies us, or there's proof that we're aware of it, we have a time frame to take care of it, or we have increased liability.
I just say that we've recently done work on behalf of an insurance company defending these cases, and it's kind of become an industry of plaintiffs, experts that help out people suing in communities, and they will ask you these questions about what your ordinance looks like and what you've done to follow up on it. So
Do you have an inspection program?
yeah, so absolutely a good idea. I put something in place.
So specific to the ordinance, I'd identified things that I will make, work with the attorney, modifications. Second part of that is recognizing that we've had discussion about fixing existing segments of the sidewalk. I don't have a problem soliciting bids to know what that cost is, and this board can make a decision at that time. The board can say right now, I make a motion to fix every sidewalk. That's the board's prerogative, it's the board's freedom. But I feel that a majority of board members would probably want to know what the cost is before they'd make a motion to spend money. So I don't have a problem soliciting those costs when we do the bike path, so that we're.
But there's gonna be a cost to that as well.
Yeah, it's a small cost. I don't think it's a significant cost.
What's small?
Thousands, not tens of thousands.
Thousands.
Yeah,
But I
to me,
also-
that's a level I feel comfortable spending money to
To
determine.
get information.
But I also think if we just went out and inspected what we have, or what we're made aware of at this point, because I think that's what we're saying,
Correct.
and we can look at, ballpark, what Mount Clemens or somebody else is charging residents, we can just do the math and say, hey, board, this is what we expect to spend. Should we go out to bids? Should we not go out to bids? You know what I mean? Like, I would just keep it simple at this point.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to go out to bid and like, I feel like at that point you're
Yeah, I
like,
could get an engineer's estimate. I can work with,
you know what I mean? Like have Justin say like, yeah, I've identified.
I have that.
No, that's what I'm saying. He knows that number and we can say, hey, based on this and this, we think it's
I think it would be good data
higher
for
square.
me.
I mean, I don't think I'm going to support it anyway, but I understand the board wanting that information. And I think it's an easier way to do it.
I just think that that's a good idea to have that at least approximate, plus or minus. Because if this ordinance goes into effect, they have 60 days to make repairs.
Well, or agree to participate with us or whatever. I mean, the point is that the ordinance needs to acknowledge that there's a finite period of time to either act or to communicate with the township. 60 days is a reasonable period of time to say, I'm gonna respond to your notice and say, gosh, I didn't know anything about this, but I did some research and I've decided that this is how I want to address it.
But that goes back to Brian's conversation at the very beginning when he said we should put a time that this is gonna start on. So realistically, if you adopted this ordinance in the next couple of months, you're too late to already do sidewalks this year, so you're not gonna start them until 2023 anyhow.
Oh, no, we've got sidewalks we need to address
But-
before
but-
2023.
But what I'm saying is the majority of them, by the time you get it all in place, the ordinance in place, and you have somebody go out there and inspect those sidewalks, and that's my second question, are you going to have the building department do that? Are you going to have the water department do that? Are you gonna have a third party inspect those sidewalks and mark them? I think those are all things that we should talk about, because I don't know if you have the manpower
Could be all three.
under roof. that
Could be all
can
three of those
Do
entities.
that, I mean.
Yeah,
Just a thought.
We don't.
do they have a sidewalk officer in the cities that surround us? Is that?
No, they'll hire like Luigi or Italia and say, hey, we'll pay you X amount, you guys go and inspect this zone and tell us what's there, and they'll flag it and mark it and report back.
Come back and say, okay.
You know how we did like LSI that one time?
Yep.
Same
But that's worth noting. I'm sure there are communities that employ someone whose job.
Not a sidewalk cop, but somebody.
No,
that-
but I mean, you say, hey, I'm already in the ordinance department. Hey, during the summer months, I'm gonna patrol this
Yeah.
neighborhood, this sector, this zone. And while I don't wanna, go too far there, it's not beyond our ability. We only have, there's only so many sidewalks in the township. There's only so many neighborhoods that have sidewalks.
And a lot of them are
Majority
new
do not.
on Union Lake, so we shouldn't be talking
There
about
you go.
those.
But the whole fact of the matter is, when you have a third party do it, it takes the onus off of the township in terms of arguing with.
Yeah, I don't know.
Is there anything along that line when it's a third party that does it? Rather than say,
Oh, yeah, sure, they signed up for it. They're the ones that are gonna replace it. Of course they
Right,
said it
yeah.
was wrong.
I can shoot holes in any system you
Right.
got. There's pros and cons. To your point, if the ABC Cement Company goes out and finds all the flaws, there's gotta be a standard, there's gotta be certain guidelines to try to do it, but inevitably, using a third party doesn't save us liability.
Right.
If the third party messes up, we're still liable.
But paying someone to make sure an inspection happens, even though, hey, our ordinance officer had to do building inspections because the other building inspector is off on a disability.
Right.
That's the part that makes sense to me. Like sometimes, especially when we would want to go out and do those inspections, that's the busy season. You know what I mean? Like we're already pulled tight.
So I got a question about safety right now on Jefferson between Metro Beach, Lake St. Clair Metro Park, to probably that, where you
Jimmy's.
have that pump station by Siesta.
The Vander DeBuff.
So they repaved that all. It seemed like at the exact same time, they took out all the ramps on the sidewalks.
They're replacing them with ADA ramps.
Now, who is that? Who's
Department
that?
of Roads.
Department of Roads is
Approaches to the
replacing-
roads, because I think they blended the.
No, not the,
They also
not,
did the
not
sidewalk.
into the road.
No, they did the sidewalk.
But it's the sidewalk, so I'm
It's
trying to
anytime-
ride my bike, I can't go on the sidewalk now because every
Because
chunk
they're
is
under
taken out, so now
construction.
I'm on the,
Yeah,
Right.
they
Yes.
pulled them all to do ADA ramps.
okay. And how much time do they have to perform that? Because that has been like
Yeah, but
that,
a
I think.
flagged off empty is not a liability issue. It's
Yeah,
just
so
an
like-
inconvenience.
Right, it's more of a, correct.
And
Yeah,
not to minimize,
Leaving it there for a year, there's
It's
liability.
30 days at least, I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah, but that's a sub of, of the general to do the cement versus the
So
asphalt.
I might do grinding and I might do removal, but then I do the asphalt, then I bring in the cement contractor, so the timing of the, and again, at some point, it's another agency, so there's a shift in some liability there, but
So that's not what we're talking about, is those ramps. We're
I don't
talking
think
about slabs in front of people's homes.
yeah. But, again, back to what we talked about, that we might not have a section in here. say, for example, there's an area, I'll give you an example. There's a sidewalk along Crocker, and there are portions of that sidewalk that are in need of repair. I'm talking about between Graham Elementary and St. Louis Church, right? You know, broadly.
Yeah.
So let's just say you walk that section and you get to I-94. Well, who's gonna fix the section under I-94? That would be an area where if I brought a cost, I would say, this is something that's really a township responsibility. I can't shift that.
Send the bill to the state of Michigan.
Right,
Yeah.
so there are, I don't wanna say gaps, but there are unique scenarios where you'd say, hey, this is a little different in front of this area. So, you know, we're not gonna make a machine here that's gonna solve every problem, which is why we meet twice a month to, you know, address some of these issues. And it's why we've talked at length about this, because we're trying to do the best we can. Yeah.
And I think your point about the trees, right, is spot on, but like, we can't make that as waving a magic wand. That's, Mr. Tominello and his planning commissioners would have to, you know.
And the reality is, I mean, how many subdivisions do we plan to build?
No, but I
Right?
think it's a fair point.
They're
They're garbage trees most of the time, and they usually cause nothing but problems, given where they're placed, you know.
It's true,
It's
absolutely.
funny, we planted a tree when we built our house. It never grew. 20 years, it came down here. We finally took it out and it didn't grow. Now we got a new one.
All
Well,
right,
so I guess, looking through this, you've got some modifications. Are we gonna put any language about every 2-year inspections, or is that?
I don't think it needs to be in the ordinance, but we need to have a routine inspection. We have to have a inspection program. It doesn't need to be codified, it can be a policy.
Well, if we're talking about liability, I'm assuming if it was in here, it would be even more supportive.
Well, it's questionable, right? Because if you miss something that you have in your ordinance that you're supposed to do, there's not a lot of wiggle room to get out of it. Maybe if, I've seen other communities go to the engineers and just have them let their summer help, walk the sidewalks is a cheap way to look at it.
There you go.
And,
Yeah, and there's an ebb and flow to the season, so I wouldn't want to do my sidewalk inspection in the spring. Right now, our building department is busy with, but as you get toward the end of the summer, maybe the fall, you know, maybe there's a time that works well for them. Maybe there are, I mean, clearly, there are times during the winter when there's not snow on the ground. Building department's slow, and they say, you know what, we're gonna nail a couple of streets per day and inspect the sidewalks. It's not beyond our ability to do. But my whole point is I really don't wanna go out and identify problems when I don't have an ordinance to fix the problem. That's where the real problem is. That's why we're talking about the ordinance, because right now, I do not have a mechanism to fix sidewalks, short of coming to you and asking you to pay for it. And while we can do that on some temporary basis, and we might have done that historically, it's not sustainable.
So the same thing applies to whether you're a resident or a business owner or a school.
Because you're a property owner.
You're a property owner, the school district's under the same ordinance. Usually they maintain, well.
Yeah, that's probably
yeah,
not my
usually the
target
school wants their
audience.
sidewalks flat.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
And they've, and truly, they have liability as well. The school district is, I mean, if I get injured at the school, I mean, I could say I'm gonna file a lawsuit against the school, so, or a business owner, or, you know.
so I know I asked this, my board, I promise this is my last comment. You can shut my mic off if it's not. Orchid, and I brought this up before, and I thought you had a reason for it. I asked the question, if the residents got together, decided to put the sidewalk on one side or the other, is that not possible?
So, when you say sidewalk on one side or the
Because
other.
I think Orchid has sidewalks on both sides.
Right, so it is a typical engineering standard to have sidewalks on both sides, otherwise you're encouraging 50% of the people across the street to get to the sidewalk.
But
So-
there isn't necessarily a requirement to install sidewalks, so if somebody said, I'm just pulling them out, can they do that?
I'm just looking at a way, because that seems to me to be the street that's gonna have probably the biggest burden when this comes down.
If somebody
So
just.
the
if
answer
somebody
to your
just said, like,
question, I would not want an ordinance that says you can just rip out your sidewalk.
No,
and
could
not
there be an
have-
exception? Could a board make that exception? I'm sorry, Mr. Witt, you were gonna say something.
No, I was trying to jump off of what you were saying, like, you raised an interesting point that I hadn't considered, but, I mean, like, my house on Trombley, I had a sidewalk, there were 4 houses that had sidewalks connected. When I did my driveway, I replaced it because, you know.
It was there.
It was there on both sides, but if And the township said, I had probably about eight flags. If I just said like, no, when I replace my driveway, the guy's just getting rid of them. Like, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that example where sidewalks are intermittent is certainly different than saying, if I'm on Orchid, I'm gonna tear out my sidewalk and not replace it. If there's an existing sidewalk and it's a complete system, it's different than having one where, where the majority of the street has no sidewalks and a small handful of homes have a sidewalk. There's a judgment call where you could say, you need to remove this and replace it with topsoil because it's, there aren't connections to it, right? So that's a different scenario.
Right.
But my point is I wouldn't want an ordinance that would preclude us or prevent us from going to a home on Orchid saying, there's sidewalks running the entire length of this street and yours is broken, it needs to be repaired. That's what we want. That's ultimately what we want. But undoubtedly, when we get into this a year from now, I'm gonna say to you, gosh, we're running into this other problem. We used to bundle our noxious weed cutting contractor with our weekly cuts. Eventually, we reached a point where we found that the industry itself split into two groups. Guys who do weekly cuts have cut themselves to a certain margin, and they don't necessarily have crews that are just sitting around waiting for us to call them on a Thursday and get out there in the next 24 hours. We modified the way we do that, and we split those two out. We're gonna have some of that with this.
Okay.
So we're gonna run into problems. We can always, modify this as we go. But I think we've got a good framework for a starting point, so I'm clear on the language I'll bring back before the board. And I'll work with Mr. Newmer to try to come up with some kind of an engineer's estimate on what we think the cost of repairs are, for existing areas that we're aware of.
Based on what our guys gathered.
Yeah, yeah.
And I don't think we need a motion to proceed, but I maybe would suggest that if there is public comment, we've had a lengthy discussion at this point, just move on, right?
Well, we're certainly gonna have public comment when we take action on this.
No, I know, but at this point, if somebody came up with a crackerjack of an idea.
If you'd like, we can open the floor for public comment in case there is some.
Thank you, board members. C. William Bardell, 25-year resident. Before I moved out here to the township 25 years ago, I looked at various houses out in Chesterfield and the sidewalk situation. As far as the tree situation, I was researching. I certainly didn't want to put a white maple, a silver maple in front by the sidewalk. So, as far as the, between the sidewalk and your house, there's hybrids that you can get that the root doesn't go too deep. And, back in the olden days, when my grandmother lived at 6 Mile and Gratiot, I could drive my bike down and where every tree was, they would tear the sidewalk out and make the sidewalk wrap around the trees before those trees, those ash trees got that disease, and they had to tear all those trees out of there over at 6 Mile and Gratiot and 7 Mile and Gratiot and all those neighborhoods. But those those were real small areas between the street and the sidewalk. But if you are going to buy a McMansion, which I was going to do 25 years ago, I did research the hybrids as to what would fit in there on that little island. So so if I'm buying a brand new house in a McMansion area, I'm certainly not going to put a silver maple in there. And I'll say another thing. My mom lived in Warren, and they started that program where you replaced your square. And at first, my mom, she jumped up and down for about 20 minutes. And then after that, and she got her squares done, she was happy as a lark. Because when you're shoveling the snow, you're not banging into that raised concrete. Just like when you get a new driveway, it's nice and smooth. So you got less maintenance there when you're shoveling your thing. So at some point, we gotta have a starting point, and I think this is a great thing. Everyone's doing it, like I said. Yeah, but most people that have a sidewalk that are good citizens, they're not gonna want their sidewalk messed up anyway, so they're probably gonna jack it up or do whatever they gotta do, and they're gonna get the right tree anyway. So that's what they do now. They don't put those silver maples in front of the houses anymore. So there's various types of hybrids you can get, so the root doesn't lift up the sidewalk. And then, again, if you use 4 inches of 21 AA, compact it, that sidewalk will never rise and fall more than a half an inch. And that sidewalk will probably never, ever crack, and it'll last probably 100 years. Maybe more, maybe 200 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Is there any further discussion on the sidewalk ordinance? I know there isn't any for Mr. Badkin. He's already declared that. If there is not, then we'll move on with our agenda to item F4. Board members, the overhead doors at our police mini station are in need of replacement. 2 of the 3 doors have broken springs. All 3 doors have some delamination issues. The lead time to get doors is currently longer than normal, so I am requesting authorization to allow the 3 full-time officials to choose a supplier and begin the work with the information to be supplied to the board at a later date. We have solicited 3 quotes, and actually one of them, I think we got one at the end of last week or today. The one quote is an outlier. We're looking at insulated doors, and we're looking at doors without windows. I talked to the sheriff's staff. For security purposes, they just don't have a need for those windows. The highest quote was $38,857. We've got a quote for $16,080. We've got a quote for $12,600. We don't have listed from the low quote who the manufacturer of the door is for us to be able to check out the specifications. They didn't identify, so we're working to find out what that is. But, you know, there aren't hundreds of industrial overhead garage door manufacturers, so it's likely.
What was the price of the one that we know met specs?
$16,080.
So we could authorize an amount not to exceed $16,080 with the 3 full-time officials.
Yeah, but
And
so when I wrote this, I didn't have those
No,
numbers. I
I
had
agree.
solicited them, and I didn't have all the quotes back, and I had no assurance that it happened from tonight's meeting.
No, but I just
So I'm
want to.
comfortable if you want to make a
Yeah.
motion accordingly, that's fine.
Yeah, I'm make a motion to allow the 3 full-timers to approve a amount not to exceed
$16,080.
Just read those prices.
$31,857, $16,080, $12,600.
When we vote on these things, I mean, we already have it in the budget somewhere. I mean, I don't go back and reference the original budget. It just seems like expenses keep coming up through the year, and it's like, oh, this sounds reasonable, okay, let's approve it. Like,
Yeah, so,
I'm trusting
well, and
the
that's-
3 full-timers.
I mean, like
that-
when you get your revenue and expenditure reports that are in on every other
Yeah.
meeting, so you can track the specific line items. So that's your reference to see where we are within the budget. But we do, if it does exceed, we will make budget amendments and those come back to us. But again, we don't usually, I know we have some materials for this, but in a general sense, if something comes up big that we didn't plan for, board's approving and we make a budget amendment later.
Okay.
sure. And these doors specifically, when we went out for bid to do all the work at the mini station, we kind of reverse engineered to try to lower the costs. One of the things that we did was to not replace the doors. At the time, the springs were still good. Since then, the springs have failed. The doors, because they're getting a lot more use now on a daily basis, where they just didn't cycle for years, I mean, it was rare.
Yeah.
They're not holding up, and they're just old and tired, and, one of them has a panel that's kind of popped out, it looks crappy, and we're having issues with the openers being able to open them because the springs have failed, and at this point, it seems silly to just replace the springs. So this is more of a maintenance issue. I don't think we thought these doors were gonna last forever, but to get the mini station open as cheap as possible, we took that out of the scope of work already.
Where would I find that budget? Just so I can, next time, add this.
fine.
Where that general allocation would be, is it under a maintenance budget, is it under a police station?
That would be specifically within the police budget if, you know, if we had allocated something wrong.
Yeah, there isn't a budgeted item for replacing those doors. We did not anticipate, I'm not coming to you saying, I think we're gonna replace the doors.
This is coming out of general fund.
This would be general.
Okay,
And I don't think it
that's what
comes
I
from the
needed.
police
No, it would,
budget
because
because
of the general fund.
because the general fund owns it. So this is, hey, we own a building, we've got 3 garage doors, and they're in poor state of repair, we need to replace them.
I mean, but specifically, it would come out of our building and grounds maintenance fund within the general fund.
Okay.
Which is what number? Got enough?
It's 260. We're at 265.
Okay.
So it's 101.
All right, any other discussion on these doors?
No, the only thing I wanted to mention, I could not find quotes for the news station. For some reason, I thought it was over $20,000. Yeah, the only reason is it actually worked to reverse engineer it to your point, right? So,
Well, and so ironically, one of the subs was a resident who was one of the people who bid on this. And that individual, who's a resident, literally leaned into me and said, yeah, you don't need to replace those doors. At the time, that's,
yep.
the
Yeah, I
analysis
remember
of them
that.
looked pretty good. But it's, you know, at this point, we've gotten to the point where that's not true anymore, so. I was looking to see if I had those bids.
Yeah, it's
buried
not
in here
important.
somewhere.
I just,
Overhead doors never flood.
Right, absolutely. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Brado. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Board. That's the end of our agenda, other than public comments. We'll open the floor for public comments. We ask that you try to limit them to 5 minutes in length.
C. William Bardell, 25-year resident, clean cut, do-gooder boy next door. Clean up, fix up, people helping people. Just want to remind everyone, check out Save Lake St. Clair on Facebook and follow, stay up to date on what's going on. And just want to comment a little bit on those garage door springs, whether they're industrial or residential. I tell you, you ever have one of those garage door springs break on you when it's under tension? Boy, oh boy, it sounds like a bomb going off. I mean, when that cast spring pops, oh my gosh, it's quite a sound. And as soon as they break, that garage door won't work very well at all. But yeah, those springs, they only last so long. You probably get about 15 years out of them springs. And it'll happen when the weather changes. They're just a casting and they're under tension, and that helps bring the door up. And when they stay broke for any number of any period of time, it'll mess up your doors. So usually 9 times out of 10, replacing that spring is a good idea. But everyone, stay safe. Enjoy the summer. Got a lot of summer left. And thank you very much for listening.
Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment. Is there any board comment? Hearing none, I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion. Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Olgiati with support by Mr. Badkins. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thank you, Board.
You did that, and it's